suspects are being. One case involves the FBI is now offering $100,000 to see if the police are releasing.
Welcome to Misty Mysteries, a paranormal and true crime podcast. I want to wish you happy holidays. I hope you get to spend this holiday season cozy, warm, and happy. This is my holiday special and my last episode of 2021. Today's episode isn't exactly true crime. I know it's a true crime week, but it is a mystery, and I think it's interesting and very lighthearted, enough for the week of Christmas. Our mystery begins on December 23rd, 1823, when a poem was published by a newspaper in New York. This poem was named A Visit from St. Nicholas, and it reads as the following. "'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mama in her handkerchief, and me in my cap, I had just settled down for a long winter nap. When out of the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters, and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new-fallen snow gave the lustre of midday to objects below, when what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh with 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in the moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came. He whistled and shouted and called them by name, now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricanes fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky. So up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then in the twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoofs. As I drew in my hand and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed in all fur from head to his toe, and his clothes were tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes how they twinkled, his dimples how merry, his cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard of his chin was white like the snow. The stump of the pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink in his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me the know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work. He infilled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his fingers aside of his nose, and giving a nod up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. I heard him exclaim as he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night." Now this poem is best known as The Night Before Christmas for most people. The Night Before Christmas has inspired many books, songs, movies, and episodes of TV shows. When it was published just 2 days before Christmas in 1823, The Night Before Christmas, or A Visit from St. Nicholas, was published anonymously, with a note from the paper's editor, Orville Hawley, saying, "We know not whom we are indebted for this following description of that unwearied patron of music, that homely and delightful personage of parental kindness, Santa Claus, his costume, and his equipage. He is while visiting the fireside of this happy land, laden with Christmas bounties, whomever it may have come, we give a thanks for it." The author of this poem was unknown, but the poem was already a hit with the public. The poem was shared 6 to 7 times after 1823, but then it just seemed to disappear after a while. Rumors would spread about who wrote the poem, saying people at the newspaper wrote the poem or the editor, until 1844, when a New York publisher, Bartlett and Wilford, published a book of poetry by Clement Clark Moore, a professor and scholar. One of the poems in his book was The Night Before Christmas. Moore revealed to the public that the collection of poems from his book had all been written at various times in his life. Moore was known for being a very stern and serious man with a solid reputation, and because of his reputation, not many people questioned him when he said that he wrote this poem and calling it closed as Moore as the author. But Moore didn't seem to care much for the poem or really want to celebrate the poem, which did raise some questions for some people. If it was his poem and he didn't want to share it, then how did it get with the paper? Did he share it or who shared it? One of the most popular theories how his poem got shared was the oldest daughter of Dr. David Butler, named Harriet Butler, overheard the poem while at the Moore's home for a Christmas party and then wrote it down and shared it with the newspaper the next year. Or Clement's oldest daughter, Mary Clark Moore, who shared a special interest in Santa Claus, shared the story with Harriet and either gave her a copy or Harriet wrote it down to later share with the newspaper a year later. Cashmere Moore, Clement Moore's grandson, went on record to say he believed his grandfather made this poem for the entertainment of his children and that it was never supposed to be published. His grandfather only claimed the poem because so many other people were rumored to be the author or were taking credit, and he didn't want people taking the credit for his poem. For some people, they had a very hard time believing that Moore wrote this poem, considering he never wanted to talk about it, even in an interview years later when he was 83 years old with the New York Historical Society. He didn't talk about the poem, and he also was never able to show anybody an original copy of the poem, and after his death in 1862, his family could never find a copy of the original poem. Then we have another family who gets involved with the situation to dispute that Moore was the author. The family of Major Henry Livingston Jr. claims that reading the Twas the Night Before Christmas poem on Christmas Eve was a private family practice that they shared. 4 of the Livingston children, as well as some neighborhood children, insisted that this was a family tradition starting around 1807. The children remember having a written copy, but when the family's home burnt in a fire, it was destroyed. And then there are some other facts that lead more towards Henry being the original author instead of Moore being the author. One comes from his ancestry. Henry is from a Dutch ancestry. His mother came from the Netherlands, and in the poem was a number of Dutch references. The reindeer's name was a huge reference. The name Donner and Blitzen reflect Dutch names such as Dunder and Bliksem, the Dutch words for thunder and lightning. To this day, there is a lot of debate on who wrote these poems, although Moore is officially credited as the poem's author. But one huge argument against Moore, besides the ancestry, is that Moore's writing style is nothing like this poem. As I said before, Moore was a professor at Columbia and he was a scholar. He published 2 books written in the Hebrew language, and he wrote in more of a serious, educational manner. While Livingston was a land surveyor, he fought in the American Revolutionary War, and he was a farmer. He wrote poetry, but he just wrote poetry for himself and to share with his family. The poems that people have seen of Livingston's match the poem of 'Twas the Night Before Christmas more than Moore style of writing. Mary von Duxen, Livingston's many great-granddaughter, believes that The Night Before Christmas, or 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, is her grandfather's, and she wants the world to know it. She told the CBC News that, "To me, it's just righting a wrong. I feel there is something fundamentally wrong with people stealing other people's work." She has made a website to show all of the evidence she has collected that show this poem could be her grandfather's poem. Some professors do back Mary with the claim that The Night Before Christmas is Livingston's poem. MacDonald Jackson, a former English professor from the University of Auckland in New Zealand, wrote a book about this controversy named Who Wrote the Night Before Christmas, analyzing the Clement Clarke Moore versus Henry Livingston question that backs the claim that Henry is the original author. Or another professor named Donald Foster, who is also a forensic linguistic, has named Livingston the author of the poem, comparing Moore and Livingston's work in his own theories. But some also back Moore as the original author, such as a history professor named Stephanie Nisenbaum, who wrote an article to support that Moore is the original author. And then Seth Collar, a manuscript dealer, he writes on his website, "A careful look at the evidence clearly supports Moore's authorship and completely discredits the Livingstons." Henry Livingston, he died in 1828, only a few years after the poem was actually published in the newspaper. So he and Moore never met or got to discuss these claims. But who do you think wrote it? For me, I know that no matter who wrote the poem, it's a very beloved poem that has definitely changed the image of the Santa Claus we know today. Let me know what you think, but for now, I wish you a happy holidays and a happy new year. I want to thank everyone who has tagged along with Misty Mysteries this year as I started my podcasting journey, and I cannot wait to see you next year for a whole new year's worth of episodes.